Nancy looked longingly at the neat rows of raspberries. Large berries are already ripe. Such a rich harvest would have made her very happy before. She would like to make jam for her son Robert. He was very fond of raspberries since childhood. It is not only tasty, but also healthy, especially in winter during a cold. But now for whom should she make jam? Robert is no more. The only son whom she raised with her husband James in love and care died 2 months ago. And the whole life of the parents lost its meaning. How unfair! Robert was only 30 years old. They so hoped that the son would soon marry, give them grandchildren. And he was in no hurry to start a family. He said that first he had to earn enough money. And in the last 2 years, everything began to work out for him, as he assured his parents. A year ago, he promised to introduce them to a girl. He said that he had fallen in love, that their dream would finally come true, they would have a daughter-in-law, and then their long-awaited grandchildren. But he kept postponing his arrival home. There was a lot of work, no time for rest. Oh, this work! From a young age, Robert told his parents that he would provide them with a comfortable old age. I studied at school for 1-5, I tried very hard. Teachers considered him a genius of mathematics, predicted a successful future. Only such talent has no place in the small village where they lived, 20 kilometers from the regional center. And there he began to go to a special school with a mathematical bias in the last 2 years of study. And after that I went to a Moscow university. By myself, without parents. They put him on a train, and already in Moscow he was met by his great-aunt. She changed the edge while he was taking his exams. And then there is the hostel. The guy understood that he had to cope on his own. The late child quickly became independent, knowing that the health of the father and mother often fails, and they will not be able to help him much, although they always tried their best. Nancy had already stopped dreaming about motherhood when, at almost 42, her only pregnancy happened. And after all, I didn't guess about such a gift at such a mature age. Infertility, her diagnosis from the first years of marriage. It was treated for a long time, but to no avail. I cried, worried at first, and then reconciled. Her husband, James, has always been a support, saying that, apparently, this is their fate to live together and love each other. But when the female doctor said that Nancy did not overtake menopause, but pregnancy, that the period was already long 5 months, she was taken aback and did not know how to tell her husband such news. Happy or vice versa? Still, the age is not youth. He himself was already 45. The anniversary was not celebrated. It was not before the holiday at that moment. Something incomprehensible was going on in the country. The news on TV is so disturbing that I didn't want to watch it. What will happen next? How to live? James, having learned that he would nevertheless become a father, was indescribably delighted, even suddenly burst into tears, which had never happened to him in many years of living together. Then Nancy perked up. She is not so old for motherhood, they will have time to raise a baby. And she didn't listen to some friends, acquaintances, who lamented, no matter how a disabled person is born, then you will cry in old age with a sick child. No, my son was born healthy and very smart. 4 parents to enjoy. There was no ultrasound at that time. And it was impossible to know for sure who they were waiting for, a boy or a girl. Names were not invented. And when I saw the baby Nancy, I thought that Robert should be called Such a Nice Boy. James liked the name too. But still, those who prophesied that parents would cry were right. Yes, but not from the fact that there will be some problems with the child. Robert was a joy and a light in the window all 30 years of his life. But how to survive his death? Already crying Nancy. It seems that the tears have ended in these past 2 months. And as soon as I remembered my son, my eyes were wet again. Why do they need these raspberries now? Who is the jam for? By ourselves, a couple of cans are enough, but here the harvest is such that it boils and boils. And it would be necessary to collect berries. Otherwise, they will fall to the ground. It's a pity. Nancy quickly filled a large bowl with large berries and slowly walked into the house. Nancy, you wanted to do some cleaning today, the husband reminded of joint plans. And he was talking about Robert's room. I didn't want to make a mausoleum out of her, to leave everything as it was during his lifetime. Although he did not visit his parents often, he was pleased to spend the night in his children's room. And now, why keep his things there? Just scratch your soul. Books can be donated to the library or school. How many Soviet textbooks for higher education are left? Now there are none. A collection of car models is also gathering dust on the shelf, and some boy could play with them. Maybe Robert's clothes will come in handy for someone solid and beautiful. With these thoughts, Nancy pushed open the door to her son's room. A July breeze blew in my face through the open window. Probably, James decided to air the room only in the morning, and Nancy had time to think, as her eyes fell on the bed of her dead son. She froze on the threshold, not believing her eyes. A husband with a vacuum cleaner carefully walked around his wife to reach the outlet. The bed was on the other side of the room where he wasn't looking. But Nancy touched his hand, and when he turned around, before turning on the vacuum cleaner, silently indicated with a glance that she herself was left speechless. Hearing James instantly stunned. On Robert's bed, at the very head, which rested against the wall next to the open window, there was a child seat, in which babies are usually transported in a car. And in it, a baby in a hat, covered with a thin blanket, slept peacefully. The couple, as if on cue, joined hands and quietly approached the bed. Nancy, how did he get here? The first thing James asked in a whisper. Through the window, Nancy suggested. I was here half an hour ago. Just opened it. Look, there's something else. Nancy pointed to a bulky travel bag next to the bed. She carefully opened the zipper. On top were diapers, next to jars of baby food, in a transparent bag bottles and nipples. What a beautiful baby! Quietly admired Nancy. And such a little one! The baby wrinkled his little nose and cried. She carefully took him in her arms, supporting his small head. But the hands remember. She smiled at the baby, who opened his eyes. There's something here. James took out a large paper envelope from the basket, and from it a birth certificate. John Maddox, he read. This is a boy. Father Robert Maddox, Mother Linda Norman. It turns out that this is our grandson? Nancy gasped in amazement and joy. Why didn't Robert tell us? I didn't have time, Nancy. The certificate was issued on the day of our son's death, 2 months ago. But who is Linda Norman? And why was our grandson thrown to us through the window? Is there anything else in the envelope? Maybe a note? No, nothing more. And then the baby cried loudly. James, he probably wants to eat. Come on, get your supplies. Let's feed John. Linda has been waiting for a call for a couple of hours. She nervously paced the room where she had lived for the last few days. A rented apartment in a residential area on the outskirts of the city has become her refuge for the last 2 days. Glancing at the empty crib, Linda struggled to hold back her tears. She immediately turned away and sat down at the table in front of her open laptop. The news website page on the monitor reminded her of unfinished business. She read an article with the headline "A Girl Tried to Commit Suicide by Becoming a Victim of Scammers" she read yesterday. And then she decided to take a desperate step, unable to withstand the pangs of conscience. Linda took a pack of cigarettes and an expensive lighter. She lit a cigarette right in the room, turning to the open door to the balcony. "Now you can, John is not around." A tear still rolled down her cheek. Heck! When will he call? She asked herself aloud, inhaling nervously. Linda hasn't smoked in almost a year. She quit as soon as she found out she was pregnant. And before, she didn't often smoke, only for the company or in a particularly stressful situation. Like now, when anxiety and even fear could paralyze all her thoughts. This almost forgotten habit, though harmful, calmed the nerves. She did not reach out for a cigarette even when she found out that the only man she could love had died absurdly. Didn't smoke then because John was there. But now. Linda shuddered when she heard the melody that announced the incoming call to a simple mobile, which replaced her expensive phone. She had long decided not to use it. Paul. She threw her cigarette into the ashtray. How did everything go? Everything is good. A familiar male voice said exactly the words she wanted to hear. Vanya at Robert's parents'. Did they see you? Not. All is well with the baby. He slept most of the way. I'm already on my way back. Thank you. Linda breathed out. I'm waiting for you. Could this all be over now? Will she follow through with her plan? And what will happen next? Well-deserved punishment. Can she get probation? Or will he be imprisoned for several years without being able to see his son? Let it be better than waiting for arrest every day. It's even worse if Michael finds her again. What will happen then? It's better not to think about it. Linda entered the cramped bathroom. Everything here was small, except for the mirror over the sink, in which she looked at herself for a couple of minutes, combing her long blonde hair. Then, with inevitable determination, she took the scissors and cut them off to her shoulders, opened the box of paint, mixed the two ingredients, and quickly applied the mixture to her hair. Black color will probably suit her. Shades white skin and blue eyes. However, what does it matter? In half an hour she will be a brunette. Linda pulled a dark cherry suit from the closet, linen trousers and jacket, a thin white blouse and a box of low-heeled shoes. It would be more comfortable. After an hour and a half, she was already ready. Her dark hair was dried and straightened, light makeup hid the emerging dark circles under her eyes, and the suit sat like a glove. It's good that pregnancy and childbirth did not affect her slender figure in any way, did not have to change wardrobe. She got used to things that she chose for a long time. And I just hated shopping with every fiber of my soul. She ordered a taxi and left the apartment wearing sunglasses when she received a text message on her phone that a car had arrived. First, Linda went to the city station and took a small sports bag from the automatic locker. And then she asked me to take her to a small village outside the city. How did she manage to get so confused? She thought as she looked out the car window. Why did she ever get involved with Michael? That's really, a surname that stuck to Linda like a bath sheet. They studied together at the university at the Faculty of Law. He even tried to look after her clumsily. However, with his appearance, even with a more successful tackle, he did not have a single chance to win the heart of Linda. She immediately did not like his fish eyes, some colorless and slightly bulging. Only once did he make her an offer that she could not refuse. No, of course, he did not dare to ask her to marry. He suggested something else, an easy way to make money, as he then said. He heard about this method and decided to try it himself, But he needed an assistant who inspires confidence with his appearance. Linda, according to him, fit perfectly. Here's the diagram. Michael said, "We go to some city, rent an apartment, and then advertise the sale at a price much lower than the market price. And cash only. I will play the role of a realtor. And you are a notary. We choose a buyer who will not contact the police. For example, whose money for an apartment was obtained illegally. And such a person understands that by declaring that he was deceived, he will set himself up. Well, we'll take the money and go home. This is a fraud." Linda was indignant. "Yes, you know the law." Michael smiled wickedly. "But we have a lot of chances to earn in this way. And there is still a chance to go to jail." Linda added. "Who does not risk, you yourself know what?" confidently declared Michael. Linda initially refused. But her thoughts kept returning to her classmate's suggestion. They successfully passed the session after the third year. The summer holidays have come. And Linda went to her mother, who lived in a village 100 kilometers from the city where the girl studied. Mom raised Linda alone. Where her father was, she did not know. However, my mother was never married. So this topic never came up in their family at all. They lived frankly poorly in an old house inherited from their grandmother. And there was no one to help them. Linda arrived, she found out that her mother needed an urgent operation that costs money. And, of course, they are not. The girl in the city moonlighted after classes as a waitress, then as a courier. I saved on food to buy something for myself from clothes. I collected a little for a summer vacation. I wanted to go with my classmates to the mountains for a few days. Now these plans were falling apart, but what we managed to collect was only miserable crumbs compared to the amount needed for my mother's treatment. And then Linda made up her mind. She called Michael and said that she agreed. Mom told me about the job that she managed to find by chance. And there they promised that she will be able to earn so much that it will be enough for the operation and rehabilitation after it. Michael did not hide his joy when he heard about Linda's consent. This is where their common cause began. That first time Linda remembered in every detail. Michael had money to rent both an apartment and an office for a notary. He also managed to make letterheads and seals somewhere. Those who wanted to buy at an extremely low price an apartment they rented in the city center overlooking the park were found on the same day that he posted an ad on a local website. I also took care of the SIM card for the phone, which after the completion of the case I was going to simply throw it away. All the fake documents for the apartment, which he made himself, looked very convincing, indistinguishable from the real ones. It remains to choose a buyer. Linda waited in her office while Michael showed her the apartment. "Tomorrow we will arrange," he said happily, calling Linda, when she was already languishing from idleness, tired of flipping through the news feed on her mobile. "Our customer is a snickering, middle-aged man." Michael chuckled nastily. He pinned down with a passion of about 20, who was fit for his daughter, but looked at her in such a way that he undressed her with a straight look. £100, mistress. The perfect choice for us. Linda herself already wanted to quickly finish this business and scatter with Michael in different directions. Since living together with him in the same apartment, she was terribly burdened. She immediately told him that their relationship was purely business. They spent the night in different rooms, but she was still afraid that Michael would dare to pester her. Fortunately, this did not happen. Although it was clear that he was extremely annoyed by this alignment. Apparently, he still hoped between times to advance his relationship with Linda, moving them from friendly to closer. For her role as a notary, Linda prepared carefully. She pulled her hair into a bun at the back of her head. She put on thick-rimmed glasses that immediately made her look older by a good 10 years. Completed the image of a suit of gray nondescript fabric and a blouse in a creepy flower. She was very worried when Michael brought to the office a man with a smug face and a prominent belly, and with him a girl in a mini dress with full lips. But she quickly pulled herself together and instantly entered the role. Linda immediately strictly informed the man that if he is married, then when purchasing real estate, he must provide his wife's permission for this transaction. No, this girl is buying an apartment. He called her last name, first name, patronymic, and I will only give the necessary amount to the realtor. I ask you to look at all documents. Of course, Linda pretended to carefully study the papers that Michael had printed out on the printer a day ago, assuring them with the stamps he had stored up in advance, which, of course, the buyer did not peer into. It's all right, she concluded. And you, as I understand it, have a power of attorney from the seller? She asked Michael, and he immediately handed her the other papers. And everything is in order. It remains to transfer the money, if you want, then right here, and sign the contract of sale. Michael counted the money and handed over the key. The apartment is at your complete disposal. Congratulations! When the happy-faced girl and the smug man left the office, Linda closed the door by clicking the lock, gathered up the paperwork left over from the fake deal, tore it into small pieces, and tossed it into a trash bag. They took all their belongings from the apartment in the morning. Their travel bags were right there under the table. Linda was afraid that the man would now return, that he would suspect something was wrong, and then they would be unhappy. Do not fuss. Michael's Sane was utterly calm. Now let's leave the office and go to the station. Everything went great. You're doing fine. His fish eyes sparkled with delight. She acted like a real professional. Yes, I would have believed you. He removed from the wall a sign in a beautiful frame, on which was written, Notary Vershkova Vera Dmitrievna, something like a pseudonym for Linda in this role. And put it in my bag. Why? Linda was surprised. More useful. Michael winked at her. I don't play those games anymore, she said decisively. I hope you change your mind. Everything went like clockwork. We can repeat somewhere in another city. This is a working diagram. Then Linda was sure that there would be no repetition. The money, and she got exactly half of the amount, was more than enough for her mother's treatment. And even enough for a rented apartment and a modest life in the city, where she will study at the university for another year. And you will no longer have to work as a waitress, or a courier, or anyone else. But how wrong she was. They did such things with Michael more than once. But that was later. And then for the first time, for a long time, she could not cope with the fear that they would be found, if not by law enforcement agencies, then by that self-satisfied man who paid decent money for the fake purchase of an apartment for his mistress. As time went. Summer holidays are over. Mom has recovered from the operation. And Linda continued her studies. Michael sometimes tried to invite her somewhere, to a cafe, cinema, or nightclub. She refused. And soon he left her behind. She already thought that he had found himself another object of attention. However, after receiving his diploma, he stopped her near the university building. Maybe we'll stir up a new business after all? He asked with a conspiratorial wink. What are your plans for the future? I'll find a job, Linda shrugged vaguely. In fact, she did not know where she could get a job. The labor market seemed to be crowded with lawyers and economists, and besides, every employer wanted a specialist with experience. She had already sent her resume to several vacancies, but no one invited her for an interview. If you change your mind, you know my phone number. On that they parted. A month later, Linda was still out of work. Money, miserable crumbs left over from their joint scam, melted every day. No savings helped. And as luck would have it, my mother had a relapse of the disease. Now an expensive drug was required. And Linda, after much hesitation, still called Michael. "Is your offer still valid?" she asked. Of course. It seemed that he was just waiting for her call, sitting on his travel bag. And so their illegal deeds continued. They traveled around the cities, selling other people's apartments. The buyers were people who did not arouse sympathy in Linda. In addition, she found an excuse for herself in saving her mother from certain death. When she asked where such money came from, Linda said that she got a job as an assistant to a successful lawyer. This answer suited my mother. Only a year later, during the next relapse, neither expensive drugs nor the best doctors helped. Mom died. Linda took her death hard. Michael said she needed to rest and gave her a tour to a sunny island. There she actually managed to come to her senses. But when she returned, she told Michael that she was leaving their business. He didn't object, only said again that he would always be glad to have her back. She had money. She moved to Moscow and decided to learn how to invest. The first attempts to make money in this direction brought results. Linda began attending forums, conferences, and other investment-related events. And on one of them she met Robert. She was impressed not only by his appearance, although he looked impeccable in a formal suit and white shirt, but also by his ability to figure out the most tricky questions related to where it is more profitable to invest money so as not to lose it. He had an unconditional flair or was too well versed in all these issues that Linda still did not quite understand. At first, he just gave her good advice. But very soon their relationship moved to another plane. Linda realized that she fell in love. And recognition from Robert was not long in coming. Their romance developed rapidly. He said that he wanted to introduce her to his parents, that he had plans for their life together. Linda's head was spinning with happiness. She already mentally represented herself as Robert's wife. And it seemed to her the most beautiful thing that could happen to her. She sat in the coffee shop, enjoying the sunny morning, daydreaming about the evening she and Robert would spend together. He invited her to live together and apply to the registry office. She had to pack her things, because there was no point in paying for 2 rented apartments when she increasingly stayed at his place for the night and even for several days. And then Michael entered the coffee shop. How did he find her? He confidently walked straight to her table. They haven't seen each other for several months. And Linda thought he was gone from her life forever. It was unpleasant for her to see him. And he said that he was very happy, and everything showed that this was actually the case. "I have a new business," he boasted. Found a computer genius who runs fake websites for those who are eager to invest money in the shares of domestic large companies. You have no idea how easy it is to breed suckers in such a case. Of course, sites are constantly calculating. But we manage to harvest. And then we create new ones. I met this guy in Bali. I have lived there for the last 6 months. I invite you with me. No thanks, Linda refused. I have another plans. I'm going to get married. How so? Michael's face changed. He clearly did not expect to hear this. Yes, I met a good man with whom I am happy, so let all our affairs with you remain in the past. Linda got up and wanted to leave. No, wait. Michael grabbed her by the arm and forced her into a seat at the table. Does your fiancé know what you were doing before meeting him? Maybe I should open his eyes? Michael, why? Linda tried to speak calmly, but she did not expect to hear this from Michael. And then, that I myself, all the years of our acquaintance, dreamed of marrying you. And you sent me to the friend zone with no hope of getting out of there. I know I'm suffering. So why should you be happy? There was so much anger in his fish eyes that Linda became really scared. And what do you want? She asked quietly. So that you go to Bali with me. I actually came for you. And don't even ask me what will happen if you refuse. I can do a lot. And the promise to tell your fiancé about your past, believe me, only flowers. So pack your bags, honey. I'll pick you up in the evening. And I know where you live. When Michael left the coffee shop, Linda's first thought was to immediately call Robert and tell her everything that had just happened to her. But what will happen next? What if Robert, having learned about her past, does not want to be with her anymore? He has said more than once that he values honesty in relationships and in business. This is the most important thing for him. What is Michael capable of? What are his threats? How did he know where she lives? Here Linda's thoughts were confused. From all sides, she could not see anything good. But one thing she knew for sure was that going to Bali with Michael was the worst possible thing. Then she decided to run away. Just drive off in an unknown direction. From Michael and from Robert. Then she somehow finds an opportunity to tell her beloved about herself. But now it's better to hide. She immediately went from the coffee shop to the station. She took out more cash at the ATM. What if the computer genius, Michael's new friend, is able to track her card? The thought might have shown her paranoia earlier. Just not now. She wrote a message to Robert that she had to leave urgently, that she could explain everything to him later. She immediately turned off her phone. Within a month, Linda changed several cities, where she rented apartments for several days. All this time she tried to figure out how to live her life. And nothing good came to mind. She bought herself a laptop and a simple cell phone. I found a simple job on the internet, not for the sake of money, but only to keep myself busy with something. And soon she realized that she was pregnant. She immediately wanted to tell Robert about it. She decided to write him a letter and email him. I went to the website of the company where he worked as an investment consultant and immediately came across the news. On the main page of the site there was a photo taken at the last business forum. And there, to the right of the president of the company, stood Robert, and next to him was a young attractive woman. Their faces were turned towards each other, and they looked like it was their date, not a business meeting. Linda couldn't hold back her tears. Robert has already managed to find a replacement for her. So why would he write a letter? But what should she do on her own? How to live on? Will she be able to handle the baby on her own? Or is it better to terminate the pregnancy? The last thought struck her as monstrous. Yes, she is now all alone. But the baby will save her from loneliness. And this is a child from a loved one, even though their relationship was not long. Now you need to think about yourself and your future baby. She made that decision that day. When she was tired of moving from city to city, she wanted to stay somewhere, at least until the birth of her child. One day the bus she was on stopped in a small southern village by the sea. And she went out and said that she would not go further. Then she rented an apartment, which was rented for a year, and she immediately paid for this period. Linda still couldn't be sure that Michael had calmed down and was no longer looking for her. And she remembered Robert with sadness and longing. Feelings for him not only did not fade, but became stronger. And the news on the website of the company where he worked, she now watched every day. There were no more photos with Robert. And in news articles, his name sometimes flashed when it came to new investment projects. There were times when Linda fought the urge to call him. She never turned on her old phone, but she remembered Robert's number by heart. Just didn't dare to pick it up. When Linda went into labor, and she arrived by taxi to a private maternity hospital, where she had already agreed with the doctor in advance, she first thought that something could happen to her, and she had no one who could take care of the newborn baby. And then she turned to the young midwife. "Here is the phone number I ask you to call if I have any complications. This is the child's father. His name is Robert Maddox." And in fact, soon the doctor said that Linda would need an operation, that she herself would not be able to give birth. In the morning, when she opened her eyes, she saw Robert with the baby in her arms. What a wonderful dream, thought Linda. If only it were real. How do you? Robert asked, dispelling all doubts about the unreality of what is happening. He is not dreaming, this is real. How did you find us? Linda answered the question with a question. They called me. And I immediately went. We have a son. He carefully hugged the baby to him. Why were you hiding from me? How did I offend you? What was wrong? Tears streamed down Linda's cheeks. I have so much to tell you. You can still do it. Robert looked at her tenderly and lovingly. How could she think that he was infatuated with another woman? When he found out about the reason for Linda's flight, that she was connected with Michael, he immediately called his friend, Paul's lawyer. And he promised to look into it and think about how Linda could be helped. On the day she was discharged from the hospital, Robert offered to immediately issue a birth certificate for her son, who was named John. Having taken the document from the registry office, he brought Linda and the baby to her rented apartment, and he went to the city railway station to meet Paul. Robert was never seen again. He should have been back with his friend a long time ago. And when Linda saw a familiar number on her mobile, she immediately answered. This is Paul. Tell me your address. Linda couldn't understand why Robert's friend was talking to her and not himself. But she didn't ask questions. Only his heart was pounding in his chest, realizing that something bad had happened. When Paul entered the apartment alone, she was holding the baby in her arms. He just fell asleep. Robert's friend asked to put John in the crib. And then he told her the terrible news. Linda's dreams that happiness in life is still possible were shattered when she found out that her beloved lost control while driving along a mountain serpentine along the seacoast. His car fell off a cliff. There were no tears. Everything inside was frozen. The thought that Robert was no more could not find its place in Linda's head. Paul spoke some words of sympathy, but she did not hear him. Only when the baby began to cry, Linda, obeying her maternal instinct, took him out of the crib and put him on her breast. But then she realized that she did not have milk. She told Paul about it. He immediately went to the pharmacy and quickly returned with infant formula, bottles, and nipples. He himself was busy in the kitchen while preparing food for John. And then I fed him. Linda sat in her chair, staring blankly at her hands. It seemed to her that she would not be able to get up, that now she would forever be chained to this chair. You don't have to go to the funeral, Paul told her as he put the baby to bed as he emptied the bottle and fell asleep. I'll take care of everything. Maybe it really was better that way. Robert in her memory remained forever alive, cheerful, beautiful, loved. consciousness still did not want to accept the fact that it was no more. Why are 8 months so stupidly wasted without Robert, when they could have been this time together? Linda reproached herself. Can you find a nanny? Paul sat down next to the chair on the floor and took her hand in his palm. Can you take care of the baby on your own? Robert said that there was an operation. Thank you, I can handle it. And then tears gushed from her eyes, as if a dam had burst. She went down to the floor and sat down next to Paul, pressed against his shoulder, and he stroked her head like a little one. Then the flow of tears dried up, and he took her to the kitchen, poured her tea. When did he only manage to find out where she had something? But he orientated himself unmistakably. And Linda was grateful to him for this timely care. Can you tell me now about your problem, because of which you had to leave Robert? He asked as he washed the cups. Yes. He didn't interrupt while she spoke. He brought his notebook and wrote something down in it. Asked to find a photo of Michael. And Linda, in her old mobile, which had been turned off for a long time and without a SIM card, found his portrait picture. He once sent it to her. I'll deal with all this, Paul promised. You need to change your place of residence now. I'll find a way to take you. Do you think Michael can find us? Scared, asked Linda. Not excluded. Better to be safe. With a child, you are very vulnerable right now. He made several calls. In the evening, he moved Linda and his son from the village to the city, to the apartment of some of his friends who were away. Don't open the door for anyone, Paul ordered. Make a list of what you might need. I will buy everything. This forced bustle distracted Linda from her grief. But when she was left alone with the baby in a strange apartment, she gave vent to her feelings. John, as if realizing that his mother was very ill, almost did not cry. Yes, and Linda tried to keep him in her arms or next to her more. Paul returned from the funeral a few days later. And he said that he needed to go to Moscow, to Robert's apartment. Settle his affairs, and then deal with the Linda case. And she simply trusted him, thanking God that at such a tragic moment a true friend appeared in her life. In Robert's apartment, everything remained the same as during his lifetime. It seemed to her that he had gone somewhere and would return soon. And they will live together. Until then, you have to wait. This illusion helped Linda survive. Paul came every evening. He brought food and everything that was needed for Linda and the baby. He still insisted that she not leave the apartment alone. He bought a stroller for John, and the three of them walked in the park almost daily. I managed to find out that only one of your episodes was subject to a criminal case under the article fraud, said Paul one evening, unloading bags of groceries. I need to go to that city and find out on the spot what can be done there. I found people to help me. When I'm done with all this, it will be possible to go to the police. Do you want me to tell you about our joint business with Michael? Linda looked at Paul in fear. What if I get a real term? Tears welled up in her eyes at the thought that she would have to part with the child and go to prison. I'll take care of everything, Paul assured her. Otherwise, we can't get rid of Michael. You will return the money to the person who contacted the police after allegedly buying an apartment from you. And you will tell about Michael. You will help the investigation. Perhaps we will be able to limit ourselves to a fine, and in extreme cases, a suspended sentence. But Michael will probably be closed. And then you can breathe easy. And money? I'm not sure I'll have that much money right now. I will help. I have money, Robert. We had joint investment projects with him. and we were going to invest in one more common funds. In other words, it shouldn't bother you now. And Linda was left alone again with a 2-month-old baby. On baby food, he put on weight well, and at birth he was more than 3 kilograms. The scenes after the operation of Linda had time to heal. And physically she felt good. And she still has a long way to deal with emotional experiences. Robert is no more. This thought somehow entered her consciousness, but invariably caused tears. My heart was tormented by unfulfilled dreams of a happy life together with my beloved. And these sad thoughts were replaced by disturbing ones, connected with the fact that Linda would have to answer for what Linda managed to do with Michael. She received a text message from Paul, who wrote that he would arrive in the late afternoon. Linda decided to prepare something for his arrival. She wanted to thank him somehow. She looked at the stock in the fridge, wondering what Paul likes to eat. And I realized that I knew absolutely nothing about him. He takes care of her and John, helps solve her past criminal cases, and she never even asked him about anything. With whom does he live? How does he spend time when he is not busy with her problems? Here at dinner, if he agrees to stay, we can talk about it. The baby was about to wake up and Linda was preparing formula for him when she heard the front door open. Did Paul manage to arrive earlier? She stepped out into the hallway and froze in surprise. Michael stood in the doorway with a bunch of picks in his hands. They definitely did not foresee such a turn with Paul. I see that I'm not happy, he chuckled. Don't try to do stupid things. He noticed that Linda looked around the hallway, thinking that she could serve her as a weapon of self-defense, but she still did not see anything suitable. But Michael took a pistol out of his pocket, twisted it in his hands, and put it back. What do you need? Linda asked angrily, fear giving way to hatred despite the display of weapons. You and I have a joint business, said Michael. Rejection is not accepted. I've already prepared everything. It remains for you, as in the good old days, to play the role of a notary. Your office is ready. It's very close here. Let's check this case, and I will disappear from your life forever. I give you my word. Unless, of course, you want to continue. Even though you're a mom now. By the way, about this. I also took care of a nanny for your child. Now a girl will come who will take a walk with him while we are busy with business. And that will be my insurance. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Will my son be a hostage? Call it whatever you like. Let's just do it. I had to wait a long time for your guard to leave. You have a talent for finding caring lovers. You followed me? Linda was taken aback. And quite a long time. Michael chuckled. It's just that I really need money right now, so I need to act quickly. And what about your computer genius in Bali? Things didn't work out with him? He threw me. In the best way. All took over. And I was practically naked. Therefore, we have to turn our business right here, at the place of residence, which we have never done before. But I suggest leaving immediately after the deal. You can together if you want, well, or apart. While Michael was saying all this, Linda had a daring plan in her head. Good, she said decisively. My bodyguard, as you put it, is pretty fed up with me and myself. Let's make some money and move on. Well, fine. Michael rejoiced. I recognize my companion, the beautiful Linda. How much do you need for fees? At least an hour. Another child needs to be fed. Just don't think that I will leave you alone, and you will run away from me again. Michael warned. I will call the buyer and the nanny. I won't leave the apartment. And you know what's in my pocket. I am not kidding. Just let's not threaten. Linda looked into his fish eyes without a shadow of fear. I agreed. So we are working. Excellent. Michael laughed. Just give me your phone, he said in a serious tone. Linda took out her cell phone, which she hadn't used in over a year, and handed it to Michael. An hour later, he carried the baby carriage out of the entrance. Linda followed him out with John in her arms. The kid was sleeping. She carefully placed him in the carriage. The nanny is already waiting for us in the nearest park, Michael said. And the buyer will come to the office in an hour. So we have time to get there safely. Linda seemed to smile broadly at Michael as they approached. Are you sure it's the nanny? Linda whispered in Michael's ear. She is the best, as I was assured in the agency, Michael answered in the same whisper. And she will give the child only to me, he added. As they walked out of the park, Linda restrained herself from turning around to show her alarm, otherwise her plan would not work. Michael held her hand tightly, but she wasn't about to do anything stupid. For the office, Michael rented space on the first floor of an apartment building. There were a couple of chairs in the room, an office chair, and a table with papers already on it. On the wall at the entrance hung a sign Notary Vershkova Vera Dmitrievna. You're really well prepared. Linda put on a pleased smile. And who is our victim? Now you'll see. Michael winked. Linda put on the wide-rimmed glasses that Michael gave her. And sat comfortably. And then a young girl entered the office door. Linda thought for a moment that she had come here by accident, by the wrong door. But Michael greeted her and offered to sit on a chair opposite the notary. Is this really the buyer? She couldn't believe that Michael had come to this. Previously, they sold other people's apartments to completely different people, unfaithful husbands who purchase real estate for their mistresses, or those who built a business on renting apartments for rent or for a long time. They always chose a buyer not from those who gave them the last money. And this girl is clearly not drawn to the mistress of the moneybags. Is she even an adult? Linda took her passport. Mary Lang. She turned 18 3 months ago. Where are her parents? I didn't think I'd be so lucky. The girl chirped happily. To be in such mansions after the orphanage. I could not even dream of such a thing. I was looking for a modest apartment, so that I could be closer to work. I got a job in a cafe nearby. In general, 5 minutes and on the spot. And buyers for the parental home in the village were found so quickly. They will arrive in a month, and the money has already been given to me. They took a house for themselves. Of course, I did not have enough money, but I took a loan. I work, I give. The main thing is that now I have such a chic apartment. Where do I sign? Here. Linda tried to calm the trembling in her hands, and she still succeeded. Congratulations on your successful purchase. Michael put the money in a bag. Here are your keys. When the door closed behind the girl, Linda wanted to throw herself at Michael with her fists. How low has he sunk? And she was dragged into this shameful affair. To deceive an orphan girl, who not only is now left without a home, but also got into a loan. But then her whole plan will fail. Which means you have to be in control. You know, you were right. Linda said with a smile. A common business with you is really what I needed. I'm back in my element. I didn't expect you to reconsider your views on life so quickly. Michael was surprised. Besides, you can see for yourself what kind of buyer, but there was no other. If you and I had worked together from the very beginning of this business, then I would not have had to be in such a hurry. And I could find someone else. What's the difference? Linda said as nonchalantly as possible. Michael smiled delightedly. And it was funny to her that he so quickly fell for her simple lie. I missed our adventures, she continued. And I proposed to celebrate a successfully turned deal. There is a hotel nearby where rooms are rented by the hour. You surprise me more and more. Michael was a little worried. What about your child? And what will happen to him? Linda shrugged. Do you trust this babysitter? Well, she has good reviews. So, take a longer walk with John, while we rest a bit. Linda included all possible charm, and other feminine tricks, and then meaningfully looked Michael into his fish eyes. You have been dreaming about this for so long. Is not it so? Yes, definitely. But somehow unexpectedly. Michael said with a slight hesitation. Well, if you don't want anything, Linda pursed her lips in disappointment. Forget. No. I want. Let's go. Half an hour later, they were at the hotel. The receptionist showed them pictures of the rooms. Linda meticulously looked at each photo. And finally left her choice on the room, decorated in black and red. But she was most interested in the bed, or rather its headboard. Michael, it seems, still did not fully believe that luck could smile on him today. He stupidly goggled his fish eyes as they entered the room. And Linda said that she had long dreamed of fulfilling her innermost desires, but had not found a suitable partner, which she regrets that she had neglected Michael before. She asked him to open the champagne they bought from the bar at the hotel reception. Michael took his glass and downed it in one gulp. And immediately fell to the lips of Linda. She had enough self-control not to wince in disgust. She pulled Michael away from her and began to unbutton his shirt. Then she took off his clothes and threw them on the bed in his shorts. And you? Michael noticed that Linda remained in a little black dress, blindly fastened with all the buttons. Do not rush things, I need to prepare. She slowly took her bag and took out the handcuffs. Do you mind playing? Oh, you must. Michael, apparently, completely lost his head from the outline prospect, because his common sense just gave way to other desires. I love these games. Then have fun. Linda snapped the handcuffs, fastening Michael's hands to the iron-slatted headboard of the large bed. She finished off by gagging Michael's mouth by fastening a strap around the back of his head. Now you're ready, she announced and turned on the music. As she left the room, she noticed horror and anger in Michael's fish eyes. Now he understands everything. Linda grabbed Michael's bag, which contained the money, and quickly left the room, locking the door with a key. She hung a sign on the handle. Do not disturb, and headed for the emergency exit from the floor. No one saw her when she got into the back seat of a car that pulled up, driven by Paul. Let's go, she said. She managed to send Paul a voice message from Robert's apartment on a simple mobile that she had been using lately. She told what kind of bind she got into and how to get out of it. And in the hotel, going down the stairs, she read the reply message. Paul managed to return and come for her to the hotel. Otherwise, she would have had to call a taxi. But further without him, her plan collapsed. Now she could share them in detail with a friend who immediately promised to help her. They quickly drove up to the park, where the nanny was supposed to walk with the baby. Linda saw the stroller from a distance and turned down another alley, while Paul moved straight to the bench, where a bitchy-looking girl was sitting with her face on the phone. Excuse me, can you help me? Paul quietly addressed her when he approached the bench. What happened? She raised her eyes in surprise and smiled coquettishly at the handsome young man. I seem to be lost. Paul smiled charmingly in response. Probably, the application glitched and led me somewhere wrong. I need it right here, please take a look. And tell me the best way to go. The girl was forced to stand up and approach him. And she did it quite willingly. Paul immediately began to talk about his unsuccessful walk. The nanny seemed to have completely forgotten about the child, enthusiastically listening to the compliments that the young man generously showered her with. Linda quietly approached the stroller, to which they stood with their backs, picked up the sleeping baby and quickly walked towards Paul's car parked at the exit of the park. Can we meet tonight? Meanwhile, he asked the nanny. Oh sure, she rejoiced. I'll be free soon. Drive your phone number into my mobile. While the girl was busy, Paul, turning his head for a second, saw that Linda had already got into the car. Unfortunately, I have to go. Paul sighed sadly. But I'll call you. See you. He smiled and walked quickly to his car. The nanny went up to the carriage and was stunned. Instead of a child, there was a note and money, an amount twice as much as that promised to her for the service by a young man who called himself Michael. I took my baby. I don't need a stroller. You can go home. Thanks for the help. Linda, the girl read the note. She looked around in confusion and fear. But she didn't see anyone. She tried to call Michael, but he didn't pick up. Then she wrote him a message that Linda herself took her baby, although Michael categorically insisted that she wait for him. Well, she was paid the money, and if he complains to the agency, she will show Linda's note. Having calmed herself in this way, the girl went home to prepare for a date and wait for a call from a young man she had just met. Only closer to midnight, when an angry Michael called her, and the expected call from a new acquaintance did not happen, she finally realized that she would not have a romantic meeting that evening. The taxi stopped in front of a hospital in a suburban village. A slender brunette with shoulder-length hair stepped out of the car, wearing a dark cherry suit and sunglasses. In her hands was a sports bag. May I go to Mary Lang? She asked the nurse, taking off her glasses. And who are you to her? A distant relative. Just arrived yesterday from overseas. Oh, how good. The nurse rejoiced. Poor girl ran into scammers. As soon as she found out that she was now homeless and with alone, she drank pills with grief. Well, the neighbor came to her just in time. An ambulance was called. Mary is in the 5th ward, she is already walking. Let me call her. Linda's heart sank painfully when she saw a thin girl in a dressing gown and slippers, who 2 days ago in a fake notary's office rejoiced at a successful purchase, her own apartment in the capital. How grateful Linda was to her neighbor for not letting her die. Linda herself could not even imagine how she could live on if the irreparable happened. You to me? Mary Lang looked in surprise at an unfamiliar young woman with shoulder-length dark hair. Who you are? I brought your money, Linda said softly. They are in this bag. All the money that you gave for the apartment to scammers. Are you a notary? Mary whispered. She still recognized Linda even with her changed appearance. Yes, it's me, but please don't make a fuss, Linda asked, and the girl nodded eagerly. The man to whom you gave money for someone else's apartment, he is very dangerous. And the police haven't caught him yet. I'm in a taxi, I can take you to the bank now, put this money into your account. A friend of mine has a real estate agent who will help you buy an apartment in the city if you want later. Here's his business card. Linda reached into her pocket. I'll go with you to the bank, resolutely declared Mary. I'll just put on jeans and a t-shirt. Paul was returning to town, leaving John at Robert's parents' house. It was his idea to take the child to them. Linda doubted, but he assured that they could handle the baby. And that way he will be safe. Because you don't know what else you can expect from Michael. Linda took his gun, but he may have other weapons. Paul wanted to tell Robert's parents that they had a grandson during the funeral, but then Nancy was taken by ambulance to the hospital right from the cemetery. And the moment didn't seem right to him. He was not ready for explanations even now, when the need for their help was ripe. What could he tell about Linda, because it is not yet clear what punishment awaits her and whether it will be possible to avoid it? And how to answer the question why he didn't tell earlier. After all, 2 months have already passed since the day of the funeral. When Paul saw the open window in the Maddox house, he decided that the best thing for him now was to leave the baby unnoticed. And immediately return to Linda. In fact, no one saw him when he put the car seat with the child on the bed, and the bag with clothes and food on the floor. He heard Nancy and James find John. And then he got into the car and drove back. Paul asked Linda to wait for him and then go to the police together. But she said that she would handle it herself, that she would write in the application only what they discussed. There was a risk that Michael, when he was detained, would start talking about past fraudulent affairs with Linda, but it would be difficult to prove this. Paul found out that apart from one case that he managed to find out about, there were no others. And this is the only thing that Paul has already managed to resolve by returning the money to the affected buyer. Linda left the police department building. She wrote in a statement that Michael forced her to become his accomplice and trick her into getting money from Mary Lang. She wrote down everything that happened from the moment Michael appeared in Robert's apartment, which he opened with a master key. When Mary's money was already in her bank account, Linda asked her to write a receipt that the entire amount had been received. And Linda attached this receipt to her application. She left a photo of Michael and his gun with the investigator, which she took when she left him handcuffed to the hotel bed. Linda had not yet sat far away from the police department when someone approached her from behind and grabbed her arm. It was Michael. "How you have changed, dear." His fish eyes flashed angrily. "Every time it gets harder to find you. I've run out of beacons. But the one in your purse still survived. I'm definitely lucky I was able to track you down again. And dark hair suits you. You look amazing. What did she do with the police? Have you decided to give up? Or give me up?" Linda was seriously scared. Still, it was necessary to wait for Paul, as he said. Why did she naively think Michael wouldn't find her or recognize her? She did not know what to say to Michael now, and simply remained silent, gathering her thoughts, which scattered in all directions. "I see that you are not in the mood for positive communication with me," Michael chuckled. "I will not let you go. And after you left me at the hotel, divorced me like the last sucker, now I won't believe a single word of yours. Then it doesn't make sense for me to answer your questions." Linda was finally able to say, pulling herself together with an effort of will. "I wanted to take care of you and your child myself." Michael, firmly grabbing her by the hand, led to the pedestrian crossing. "But now I don't know where your child is, but you are in my arms. And I don't intend to leave you. I eliminated one of your lover. I will remove the second. What does it mean?" Linda stopped dead in her tracks. However, they were standing at a pedestrian crossing, and still had to wait for the green traffic light. Linda had no idea where Michael was taking her. But what he had just said crossed out all other thoughts. That accident on the seacoast was not an accident. Michael chuckled. I fixed something in your poor fellow's car, which is why he didn't manage on a sharp turn. Did you kill Robert? Linda was taken aback, she couldn't believe her ears. Just removed the obstacle in my path. It's funny, but I followed him all the way, and he didn't even notice. Rage and hatred swept through Linda's consciousness, turning off the instinct of self-preservation. She pushed Michael with all her might into the roadway where the cars were racing, and flew after him, because he held her hand tightly in his. Our John is 1 year old today. What a big boy, what a handsome boy, how he looks like his dad. Nancy wailed, fussing around her grandson, who was sitting in a high chair and pounding on the table with a spoon. Nancy, it seems that they brought the cake that you ordered in the pastry shop in the city. James entered the room and couldn't help smiling when he saw his grandson. John, do you want to eat? James, so I just fed him. Nancy laughed. Look after the baby, and I'll take the cake. But when she left the house, she noticed 2 cars near the yard. She immediately recognized the second one. It was Paul who had arrived. They were expecting him a little later. He tightly hugged the mother of his dead friend and helped to take the cake in the box. How is Linda? Asked Nancy, already in the house. The last operation went well. Doctors promise that she will be able to walk without crutches. But it still needs a long recovery. Are you getting along with John? Don't need a babysitter? What are you, Paul? Why do we need a nanny? My grandfather and I do everything together. And John is already so big. I started walking myself. An eye is needed. But we make it. Don't worry and tell Linda that her son is fine. He likes his grandparents. Paul smiled at the kid, who burst out laughing in response. He really feels good in the house of his own people, thought Paul. The parents of Robert and himself became really close people. They did not know much about what happened a year ago and what events followed after. Paul was only able to explain to them why he was forced to secretly leave the baby when he arrived 2 weeks later. Linda was then still in the hospital in the intensive care unit. She miraculously survived after pushing Michael under the wheels of the bus, and he pulled her along. Michael died on the spot. Linda has had several surgeries. And only now there is a chance that she will be able to finally recover. Despite the fact that she almost said goodbye to life and suffered so much during these months, Linda assured that she did not regret her act. Paul did not stop caring for her, little John, and then for Robert's parents, not because he considered himself obliged in memory of his best friend. He felt that he himself had found a real family. On the eve of Robert's death, Paul's wife and young daughter left to another man. They went abroad. And Paul was left all alone. Heaped worries did not allow him to unravel, although the loss of a friend was hard for him to endure. He was glad he helped Mary Lang, an orphan girl who nearly killed herself when she was the victim of Michael's scam. She managed to find a small apartment in a good area of the city. Paul helped her move and settle in. And recently she called and said that she was marrying a good guy. Paul, son, my hands and the table, commanded Nancy, having finished arranging numerous dishes, from which there was an appetizing smell. Are you overnight? James clarified, and after an affirmative nod put the bottle and glasses on the table. Let's drink to the health of our birthday boy, his mother, and all relatives and friends. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and give us a like.